Harvey, what day is it?
November 28, 2022, corresponding to Hey Kislev 5782.
Okay. One day these statements of Harvey's are going to be famous. They're going to be in the archives and
Will be famous. I'm just,
Harvey's announcements. It's like Ed Sullivan, you know. Absolutely. Zeichen Nishmas. Shlima? Shlima. Basra Moshe. The Neshama should have Aliyah.
Amen.
Well, can we throw in my grandfather's tomorrow night?
Go ahead.
Chaim Tzvi ben Avram.
Chaim Tzvi ben Avram. The Neshama should have Aliyah as well.
That's the 2 weeks ago last year.
Yeah, right.
All right. So this week I thought maybe I'll go backwards. Because last week you talked about whether an animal is muktzah, and if you have a dog, there's a pet, there's a muktzah. We saw that there was a machokus rishonim. Probably the two most important rishonim is the Rush and there's a sefer called Chuvas Maharach or Zerua. So they have a machokas. And then we saw that a tshuva from Rabbi Yosef where he says a dog is muktzah. So now I want to show you. If you left the shiur last week, you probably left thinking that there's really very little basis to be matir for a person to carry a pet on Shabbos. But I want to show you the other side of the story tonight. And so let's start from the back of the booklet. There's tshuva from Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe is after Rav Moshe already passed away. His children printed, Reuben and Rav David printed a 5th volume of Or Chaim together with Yardei and other things, and he has a very short tshuva about about pets. He has in the earlier Igros Moshe. I don't remember if I put it in here. But he has in an earlier volume, on page 10, okay, good. On page 10, he has an earlier tshuva about an aquarium. He says, near the middle of the page, where the bar is, on the left side, this is in Chelik Daled, U'talto b'Shabbos yantiv hakli im dogim k'tanim, shenasu l'noi u'kashir abayis, to carry a fish tank that's there for beauty and to enhance the house. She'asur, you're not allowed to carry it. The balichayim muktzim because the fish are muktzah. After the chiyagavna, the venka grogos v'tzumukim. Conversion Tosas Shabbos Tosas says that animals are like unripened fruit that are muktzah. The maski shemaski delok Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef in Tosas said that chicks are not muktzah because you could use them to calm down children that are upset. But Tosas is cholek. He says that's halacha. V'hacha gam hakli aser lo shayach lahafriach. The kli is also aser because you can't separate the water, the fish, and the kli, and therefore it's considered a basis l'davar ha'aser for the whole Shabbos. So Rav Moshe is pretty clear that goldfish are muktzah, even though goldfish are, you would think it's basically, this should be the same as a pet, but we'll discuss that a little bit later. The same as, let's say, a pet dog or a pet cat. But Rav Moshe clearly says that fish in a goldfish tank are muktzah.
What does he mean, lo shayach lahafriach?
I think he means that a basis l'davar ha'aser is only if you're planning, if you have to leave it there on Shabbos, you won't be able to take it off. No, that's not really true. If it's basis bein hashmashos, you say migadas kasei bein hashmashos, it's kasei kuyam. I don't know what it means. There's another opinion in the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa right underneath. Shmir Shabbos, I forgot to write that. That's what the sefer is, but he says b'asher le'akvarion. What is that? Aquariums. Atzma shamayim v'dagim shabo yesh makom lahachmer v'lachol shel iser muktzah. There's a basis to be machmer. So the basis is because you see on the bottom, he says, "Ayin k'sois hashulchan, the afshos l'taltos adagim mishum muktzim mikom kol mutar l'taltos aquarium. Havi k'klisha malachta l'heter mikem sh'osur l'noi ukisha bay." The exact opposite of what Ramesh says, that since it's made to beautify the house, so it's not. Even though the fish are muktzah, but the aquarium on a whole is not muktzah. And then he he says the tarchian, the ha'akli habasas l'dagim, kibbutz kli yishmalayim. How could the fish be not muktzah? If the fish are muktzah, how could the kli not be muktzah?
Right.
And then he said, we're having it lower down. V'gam mishal sechuvas yabia omer makshal al ha nezer Yaakov. Nezer Yaakov said the same thing, that an aquarium is not muktzah, and the Rabbi Omer asked the same question. The Gamhu b'maskon also sober the local ksosa choshen hanal, who also talto aquarium mikoko. He holds the aquarium. U'umazeh. In contrast, Shamati Mir Rishon Zalman and Shlita, the Shemei Shabbos L'Chosa was very close to Rishon Zalman. He quotes him constantly. The Mistaver Da'afsha Kliv Amayim Heim Bosses L'Dogim Mikokom Hol V'Kulam Yachad Miyuchadim L'Noy Talti Mokom Mokom because they go Hayimachmer Rosh Mishum Lo Plug. The whole entity, even doesn't matter if the fish are muktzah, but the whole entity is to beautify. It's like flowers. Gam efshar d'sham ma'iri b'ofen she'em regilim kol kach etaltal kelev b'makom u'makom k'mo she'regilim hayom b'degei noi u'chein b'stavar she'einam chalukim miparchei noi. They're the same as flowers. The shaper shari b'tiltu b'shavas. V'afshar dogam atzim muksum yikom yachim akli v'amayim hein kishut. It's a big chiddush because, as he's saying, even though the fish are muktzah, but the whole entity is like flowers. So you can't consider. It's hard to understand how could if the fish are muktzah. So what stops it from becoming a basis? Actually, Rosh Zalman talks about this in another place, on page 9, where he says. He says on the upper part of the page, he says Gam Efsher, we're about 3 paragraphs down the right side. Gam Efsher the Ba'ofus Mitzafsim Kol Noah Mari Ba'ofen Shem Region Kokach Taltal HaKluv Mibakum Makum. He was comparing a fish tank to a bird cage. So he says the rush is a bird cage is muktzah. He says it could be it's muktzah because nobody carries it around, so it's not considered like a decoration. He means that the fish tank is a mistaver that it's not different than flowers. The shaper shari b'tiltu Shabbos. Even if the fish are muktzah, but the whole thing is a noi. Mikom makom yachad im akli v'amayim heim kishu the mutter shaper b'tiltu. The kasha that we just saw on the Ksais Shulchan, if the fish are muktzah, how could the tank not be muktzah? Because the tank as a unit is a noi. And then he asks, Ach lo yadati lo ma'adagim heim muktzah. Also l'hotzim k'shei tzara hafetz hamayim v'rikum yachad heim l'noi u'mutarim b'tiltul. If already you're saying that it's for noi, so then the whole thing should be for, even the fish aren't for noi. So why is it different? If you're saying it's like flowers, so the fish should also be like flowers. Okay, anyway, but I just wanted to show you, the Ramosha says that fish in a fish tank are muktzah. So now, if you look on page 11, this is a famous issue with Ramosha's Tshuva. Ramosha, in the 5th chelek of Igros Moshe, has a Tshuva about birds, whether they're muktzah, and pet birds. And the tshuva was originally published. This is Rabbi Badner, who was in Lakewood when I was in Lakewood. He wrote a whole bunch of stories, Rabbi Pinchas Badner. So in the back of the sefer, he has tshuvos that he got from Rav Moshe. So one of the tshuvos is the tshuva here that's printed that we're going to see right now. I forgot what page the tshuva is on, but it's someplace here in the back. So he says. So he says, birds that sing, like parakeets, are they considered to be muktzah? So he says, they chirp, and not only do they chirp, but the kids play with them. Ha'im dino k'muktzah is considered to be muktzah. So he says the Tosas Shabbos Daf Mem Hey hit there Rav Yosef V'talto Efro Achai the Chazi L'Sachik Bo Tinok. Rav Yosef said that it's mutter to carry a chick because you could use it to quiet down a baby. But then Tosas disagrees with Rav Yosef. So the question is could you be samich at all on that shita in Tosfos. So he says, Tshuva, Kol Bali Chaim Habilei Muktzah. All living creatures are muktzah. I feel also on shatinuk mesachim gehem, even if the child plays with it. So it's black and white that a bird. Here, no, this is not it. That a bird. Keep going, yeah, keep going. So he says that it's muktzah. So then in the small print it says Elin came him yuchadim l'shuim, and what does it say in the parentheses? Pets. So but then the truth is that those last few words were added on because in Rabbi Badner's Sefer, which I don't know why I can't find where the truth is, but in Rabbi Badner's Sefer, those words don't appear. They have to be.
He has it English right here. You put it on top, no? Pets are considered functional.
Yes, well that's in the English part, but he has Ramesh's tshuva, and he doesn't have that part of the tshuva that that doesn't appear in his tshuva. Okay, maybe it's not in the back.
Is that why it's in a different font?
So why is it in a different font? So if you look on the bottom of the page, in the Hakdama to this volume, so the Hakdama is B'nai Mechaber Hamotzim Lor. The people that printed it were Rav Reuven and Rav David. So you see, it was printed in Tafshin and Vav. So that was 26 years ago. So he says, Anu Modim, I don't know what that stands for. Nichtei Adoni Avimari, to the grandchildren of Ramesha, Harav Gom Rav Shapsi Avram Akoyim Rappaport. Oh, here it is. Oh, the top one. Here. This is Kol Ba'al Chaim Havim Muktzah, feel also in Shetinokas Mizachim Hem. So he doesn't say black and white. It doesn't say, here, Izzy, see? It doesn't say that pets are not muktzah. So he says here that Mordechai Tendler and Rav Shapsi Avram Rappaport, they're both grandsons of Rav Moshe. Rabbi Mordechai Tendler is the son of Rabbi Moshe Tendler, and Rabbi Rappaport is another grandson. So he says, they write in the bottom here, Kachosifu ha'oros b'soch ha'tshuvos k'dei she'yoretz hamayim, and they added extra ha'oros to the tshuvos, ba'os miyuchados k'dei lahavdila mima shenichta be'etzem k'sav yad kocho. They put it in a different, what we call font. They put it in a different font, a small font, in order that you should know that it's not part of Rav Moshe's handwritten tshuva. So Rav Moshe did not write this line. That's why it doesn't appear in Rabbi Badner's Sefer. But it appears here, they added it on. So when I spoke to Rabbi First a few weeks ago and asked him, could you rely on Rav Moshe's tshuva where he says the pets are not muktzah, he says that's a forgery. That's not part of the tshuva. You look at Rabbi Badner's Sefer, you see it's not in the back of the Sefer. And Rabbi Badner himself says that he heard from Rav Moshe that pets are muktzah. If you look on the top of this page, it says, he says pets are considered functionals. Playing with them or looking at them is not considered a function. That doesn't make it into having a use. And so what does he quote? He quotes Tosas and Shabbos that says that chicks are muktzah, and he quotes the Hagos Ashri that we saw that says that chicks are muktzah. And he brings the Nezer Yaakov that says that here about 5 lines of I am in Michal Shabbos Shehevi B'Shem HaNezer Yaakov the Ofus HaMitzavsim B'Kol Noah Kagon El Shekar Parakit Kevin Shebnei Adam Min Nagim B'Kolam then B'Kol La Muksaim. That's one sefer I didn't show you, but there's a sefer Nezer Yaakov that says that they're not muksa. V'Hevi Od B'Shem Shasus Halachas Ktanos the Mutter L'Talta B'Hem L'Tina L'Saybo L'Chol Shashum Bo that we did see last week. The Halachas Tana says that animals are also called kelim, so this is a klish heter. Achay masik sham ha minchas Shabbos l'maiser roy lahachmer. V'chein hiskimer over poskim. The minchas Shabbos is not willing to rely on those two svarim who make it. The Kachkos of Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Rav Shulchan Aruch, Shlomo Zalman, first Lubavitch Rebbe also says that birds are muktzah. V'chein shamati lehedya mehagon Rav Moshe Feinstein Shlita. This I heard from Rav Moshe that birds that are pets are muktzah. V'ayim b'tshuvaso v'so hasefer oy os chav daled. So So he says. So Rabbanan says that Ramosha says that they're muktzah, and Ramosha before the tshuva was touched up says that they're muktzah. So how come, and the flow of the tshuva is, I mean, Ramosha was asked about siparim ketanim shemitzafsifim time misachim, birds that are small and children play with them. So how is that different than pets? And he says a line before, all animals are muktzah, even the ones that kids play with. What are they playing with? The refrigerator. They're playing with the live pets. Elohim Kainhem Yuchadim. That's a stira, minei bay. In the same line, he contradicts himself, according to this Hagah. So, if you look on the next page, and I took away Yaakov Garland's thunder. He was so happy he found this for me.
I brought it as a backup. I called it on my tender. That was
you called it retender, and retender told you to look at this?
No, he told me something.
What did he say?
You want me to tell you what he said?
Yes, what did he say?
Well, it's a little bit
Which Rebbe tender? Mordechai?
Yeah.
What did he say? Oh, you didn't call Ramosha tender, I guess.
That's hard.
Yeah, I know.
He said that in the Tendler household, they had 2 cats, Buttercup. And our Moshe was there frequently, and people played with Buttercup, held Buttercup, and he never had any issue with it.
Okay.
That was the short.
Okay, so there you are.
Was actually in the house.
So the Raya's from Buttercup.
No, well, we'll see. So the raya is, well, the fact is that Mordechai Tendler and Shapsi Rappaport added that. They didn't just add it for nothing.
Right.
So he has here a letter that Rabbi Tzvi Reisman from Los Angeles wrote a letter to Rav Shapsi Kohen Rappaport, and he said in the last paragraph here, where I have it underlined in the middle of the page.
Which page?
On page 12.
Okay, thank you.
So there's the first section is the letter from Rabbi Reisman, and then the second section is the letter from Rabbi Rappaport. So he says, where I have it underlined, L'she'elos halomdim esmach l'kabel pratim l'sofim ha'im tosefes b'ashusazu ha'mishana l'chutim is called tshuva. This edition, I want to hear more details. That because this addition to the tshuva changes the entire tshuva. Mechadeshes shechayes machmad. That's another way of referring to a pet, an animal that's precious. Ein a muktzah. Nemra b'mefurish agera Moshe. If he became adul or nichtav yalo b'atzmo. If Moshe held out the way, how come he left it out of the tshuva? That's such an important thing. So he says. So this is the response of Rabbi Rappaport. He says, "L'chaved the Rav Tzvi Reisman." So he says, "We have it underlined. She tells us Rav Moshe, bebir muchot ha'isa shechayis mechmad pets ain't a muktzah." He certainly, unequivocally held that the pets are not muktzah. Kach amrli kama v'kama pamim, as Rav Moshe said many times. Be'enai haya hadavar muzar. I thought it's strange. V'anita anti sha'adam eni yochel hagdir ba'alechayim kechayfetz. I said the same story last week, that you can't, that the Rush says that the reason why the birds in the cage are muktzah is because they're not a kli. So I said, what does he mean it's not a kli? So I said, he means because you can't make an animal into a kli. Right. You can't make a gavra into a chafsa. So even though an animal is not a gavra, but it's a living thing. So he says, mishum she'etzem ruach chayim b'bali chayim also autonomous. V'raka asher b'ali chayim nishchat omeis hu nasa chayfetz. It's only after you kill it or you slaughter it, then you can say it's a chafsa. Here's what he's saying. I didn't follow, but now I understand. He's saying that your designation doesn't do any good because it's an independent entity. You could designate a piece of wood or a rock or a board because the wood doesn't have any of its own autonomy. It's not able to make any decisions on its own. But an animal is you. What right do you have to decide just because you own the animal? I mean, I don't hear his svara so well. I mean, I understand about a person. You can't decide for a person what he is, except nowadays people. Okay, no. I'm going to say the wrong thing, but but you can't say an animal. Why can't you? But that was what he tied to Ramosha. Raka sher bal hachayim nishchar omeis unasa chayfetz hanosul hagdarasu shabal ta'anosi zu lo huskabel das Ramosha. Ramosha didn't agree with my taina. V'hutan shehabaylos al bal chayim shalalos autonomy hagdaras whatever it is shalot hagdaras is v'hu mugdar. The fact that you own it, if you wouldn't own it, so then you don't have a right. You can't decide that somebody else's cat should be a pet, but your own cat, it's yours, so you could decide what you want to use it for. And this was printed in a very prestigious journal called Maria, which comes out of Eretz Yisrael, and this was in Tafshin Ayin Ches, so not that long ago, about 5-6 years ago. So,
When did Rav Rappaport move to Bar Ilan?
I have no idea.
Used to be a Rosh Yeshiva in Efrat.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I okay. You know him?
Sure.
Okay.
He's a very prominent Rosh Yeshiva in Efrat.
He's trustworthy person.
Yes.
Okay.
Big Talmud Chacham.
Together with Moshe Tendler. Okay, so look.
His father.
What?
Moshe Tendler is his father-in-law.
Oh, he's a son-in-law of Moshe Tendler. Oh, so they're brother-in-laws. Okay, I was wondering how he got into the family. Okay, so
He was one of the first Rebbeim at Shiva Haratzion.
was he Rosh Yeshiva in America?
No.
For a while,
He's
no.
Israeli.
But is there another Rappaport? There was a Rappaport in Springfield, I think, or in Elizabeth.
I don't know.
I think so.
But he himself is Israeli. And he went to learn at MTJ. And he was
Okay.
in Connecticut for like 10 years. And went back to Eretz Yisrael. And he was Rebbe Gush. He was Rebbe Gush for 10 years
Okay.
before he started his own yeshiva.
Okay, so there you have it. In Russia, what you have to say, even though he doesn't say it exactly, but you have to say Ramosha changed his mind. That originally, I mean, it's hard to say that when Ramosha wrote the tshuva the way it is in Rabbi Badner's Sefer, that he didn't mean that it's not that a pet's not muktzah, because he's talking about it. The kids are being masachik with it, and Rabbi Badner says in the Sefer, that the part that I showed to you in the footnote, he says that Ramosha told them that pets are muktzah, so it must be that he changed his mind. Maybe Moshe, I don't know if in Europe, probably the European Jews didn't have pets.
He probably saw them at Sears here. So a lot of people have pets here. So,
Maybe he saw that they. I don't know,
Tendler
but
said he has more
What?
details in the
Including
source.
Rat-
Moshe.
including what's her name?
there's more details where? Oh, Masaras Moshe.
Yeah, he didn't tell me which volume.
Oh, okay. And there's only one volume.
He said there's 4 volumes.
Oh, there's 4 volumes of Masaras
And
Moshe.
the fifth is.
Oh, I didn't know there was 4. I have 1 volume. I looked last week and I didn't see
That's what's
anything.
missing from the 3 there.
Okay, is
He
it on?
didn't tell me which volume.
Is it on? Is it on any of the Otzar Chachma?
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Now, I just told him now that he told me that, I said, okay, now I have to go buy them all.
All right. Anyway,
Is
so
there a difference between a noi and playing with it? Like fish, you don't play with, you just look at it.
that's an excellent point. Excellent. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. So
Also, one other thing, they don't bring this up, but a seeing eye dog doesn't have autonomy. A seeing eye dog does exactly what they're trained to do. I think almost everybody would agree that is not.
So Shlomo Zalman in the quoted in the what do you call it in the Shmir Shabbos Chosel says that he thinks that a seeing eye dog, since it's with the whole intention is to serve that
Yeah,
purpose,
yeah. Purpose.
so it's not
That'd be
not considered muktzah.
But according to Rappaport's definition, or according to his approach to emotion, even a seeing eye dog should get it.
Yeah, that's correct, but Ramosha rejected it. So apparently Shlomo Zalman also, to some extent,
But
he.
seeing eye dog has no autonomy.
Seeing eye dogs have autonomy, you train that autonomy out of it.
That-
But it's still
exactly,
about,
but at that point,
it's still about chaya.
Right.
Okay,
When it's not in the harness, it actually.
When it's not in the harness, it has autonomy. Right.
I dealt with them.
This was a little bit more than that. Than he did.
there's more here.
Robot
That was,
like
you know.
If the seeing eye dog sees Buttercup, it goes chasing after Buttercup.
No,
just
no,
interesting
actually,
question
no,
about AI.
Doesn't say that. I mean, he says- when he says-
What does he say?
Well, this part, I mean, he says, "L'chein advarim she'osafti ho yedaito shel agon Ramosha v'fosach halacha shelo v'hu yoda shenosav es advarim which makes
Moshe was consented that it should be
That's what he
added.
says, yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, there's another two. You know what? So let's go back again, back to what we did last year. I just reviewed to you very quickly. We had 3 Rishonim discuss whether chicks are muktzah. There's the Tosis in Kira, and go to the first page. The Tosis in Kira says, Pirish Rav Yosef lo naka defra chai mishun dechai chosik l'shasik bo tinog kishabocha. Rav Yosef, who's one of the Bali Tosis, says that he thought that a live chick is not muktzah. Ve'ein nira, and Tosis disagrees, and he brings a raya from the Gemara. And then we had the next in the middle in the rush. There's the Hagoysa Shri. Those are emendations on the rush. He says, Efra chai amar her menoach. Poras, the same svara that you can use it to quiet a baby. If you said the fact that you could use it for something makes it not muktzah, so then a pretty rock also, if you wanted to, you could use it. So therefore he rejects that it's muktzah. And then the Mordechai at the bottom of the page says the same thing. Pirish Gutzarach Bakom, Mashri the Froach Muksenheim, the time is Bali Chaim Mutzins, Mashri the Muksa because they're Bali Chaim, Rabbi Shimshon Pirish Dafkim Lolaba Biyom, the Imulav came, Habi Chazi Shas Bosatinik. If it's not good, it'll be Muksa, but otherwise, Rabbi Shimshon holds that you can use it as to quiet a child, Vidor of any Iker, but Uvitos is Rachti. So you have 3 Rishonim that say it's not Muksa, Rav Yosef, Rav Poras, and Rav Shimshon. But they're all rejected by Tosis rejects Tosis and the Hagoysa Shri and the Mordechai. They all reject that position. Now the truth is that really has nothing to do with pets. Why is that? It's very, very different than pets. But these 3 sources, they're different because they're not pets. They're talking about a regular chick that's walking around. You didn't designate it to be your 2-year-old's toy. There's 100 chicks in the backyard. So now the question is, if they're a live chick, it could be used it has some utility. It could be used to quiet down the baby when the baby cries. So like the Mordechai, the Rebbeinu Tam says that if you'll say that the fact that you could use it makes it not muktzah, so a rock that's pretty, you could also use it. Now, if you designate a rock, it becomes not muktzah. But here you didn't designate the chick. Whereas if he's comparing it to a pretty rock, so that L'chari should say, well, but if you designate it, shouldn't be muktzah. But it's not. He's not talking about chicks that are designated. He's talking about non-designated chicks. The discussion about a designated object or a designated animal is in the next page, on page 2. The tshuva, the marach or zerua. This was the Rav Chaim, the son of the Or Zerua. So he's talking about, on the right side, he says, nearly Alpha Bishabali Chaim Muksim, Nikol Kanila Hatu Tato Ovos, and Mitzafsim Bekol Na Kuvo. Birds in a bird cage are not muksa. And he says the reason why they're not muksa is he brings a raya from instruments, because instruments, you see, they're not muksa. They're only muksa because you're not allowed to. The Chazal made it muksa because you might be because of Xera, but otherwise because you might fix it. Otherwise, you see it's not muksa, even though the only use is to play music. So you see that's called a use. So, but on the left side, the Rush rejects that, and the Rush says, I would not have the courage to say it's mutter. You can't compare it to a kli. The af kli shemachta isher tzar gufa tzar become mutter. If it would be compared to kli, so kelim, even if it's a kli shemachta isher, you're allowed to carry it. Avot tzroras shebechatzar afilu tzarch behem tzar gadol asul tal mishum de'ein taras kli alehem hachinami bali chayim. So he says this is not a kli, just like rocks that are in the yard are not a kli. This is also not a kli. V'yesh lesser yoser b'bali chayim they mishtamish b'bali chayim v'lo pul rabban b'bali chayim. And secondly, there's an issue to mishtamish b'bali chayim. For example, you're not allowed to ride a horse, even if you don't touch it. You're not allowed to ride a horse. There's Xer, because we're afraid that you might break off a stick and use it as a whip. So you're not allowed to, if you're carrying it, you're being mishtamish with the Baal Chai. So what is the Rush? So the big question is, the Rush is comparing it to. He says it's similar to rocks in the chutzner. That even if you need them, it's muktzah. So the big question here is that if you're going to compare it to rocks, if you're miyachid a rock, it's not muktzah. So why don't you say here that it's true, if you wouldn't be miyachid it, if there's a chick hopping around, so you weren't miyachid it. But if you're using it as a pet, you were miyachid it. So if you miyachid it, so then why should it be muktzah? If he's already comparing it to pets. So the answer is, I think, there's a few ways to answer that question. One answer is what Daron said, that this is not called a hishtamshus. It's just passive. The kids are not playing with it. It's in the bird cage. So maybe when he says it doesn't, but maybe he says that these are not considered a kli, ain't Torah's kli aleim, maybe means because you're not really using it. But maybe if it's a cat or a dog that you actually play with, maybe the Rush is not talking about such a case.
Plus, we already saw Shitos tonight saying that the fish in the bowl, they're also not you're not playing with the fish. You're just looking at it. Said it's a shashua. It's a delight.
So then,
to look at them.
So those Shitos obviously hold that it is a shimush. But maybe the Rush that says that it's muktzah, maybe he holds that that's one possibility. The other possibility is that he means to say that I said this for our last week, that you can't make a Baal Chai into a kli. It's a living creature. You can't make something that's alive into a kli. A kli is an inanimate object. You can't transform a living thing into a kli. So but either way, the Rush said, but the difference will be between these two explanations. If the Rush means that you can't transform a living creature into a kli, so there's no difference, even if it's a cat or a dog, it would be muktzah. But if their own svara is right, that the reason why he means it's not a kli is because you're not actually using it; it's just passively there. So then you could say that it's different than a dog. So this issue, Rav Yosef, he raises this distinction that you could say that birds, their own svara, he raises it in. No, he doesn't really raise it, but he says. You look on page 4. He says, "Reisi on the left side, Reisi v'sefer Nezer Yisrael shehevi divrei marach or zerua shemater l'talto ovus hamitzavsim b'kol noah." You're allowed to carry birds in a bird cage. V'achazeh hevi ma'shikosim pachad yitzlok sheklovim ketanim shehanoshim mishtashos behem osel l'talto b'shabbos. A dog that the women play with, you're allowed to carry them. It's also to carry them. In lotion numbers, she came shem yuchadim mishtashei behem u'eschamim behem b'mosacharav. They even use it as a blanket. So maybe for that reason it's not muktzah. V'chein nira midirei Rabbeinu Shimshon shehevi Mordechai. Umikol makom haMordechai sham dachil dvar. The Mordechai disagreed with Rabbi Shimshon. V'hachi mistaver lo yehei ela. But there's still a problem of being mishtamish b'alachayim. Ufiya Amar yeshlitkos rayas ha'pri yitzli me'amordechai d'shani hani d'kayim l'hachi kamo shekasa b'ksuvas the mitla b'guraisa k'naisa. He's saying that you can't bring a raya from the Mordechai to the case of the birds because the chicks you didn't designate them. They just you could use them, but you didn't designate them. But Mash'enkein, the birds, he says that the Gemara says in Ksubas that if a woman has dogs to play with, she gayon, I think. So the Gemara says that if she's playing with her pet dog, it will keep her from going crazy. So he says you see such a thing as designating a pet. So therefore, he's saying there may be, if you designate it, it's different than the case of that's what I just told you, that the three Rishonim in the first page have nothing to do with the Shiur of pets, because they're talking about non-designated. So Rav Yosef is also makes that distinction, but he says Mikol Inyan Dina Tzaddik Pachi Yitzul Asar, but nonetheless he agrees that it's muktzah. Why? Because b'shayos shechus marach u'b'shayos rush lesser, because the shayos shechus the rush that's quoted by the rach says it's aser. So now the only thing is though that so he's saying that birds in a cage are the same as a dog that you're using to warm yourself. So if you'll say like their own, so they're not the same, because it's a because one is being used and one is just there. But Rav Yosef, you see, he obviously held that they're the same, and he understood the rush to mean that the reason why it's muktzah is because it's not you can't make a dog into a kli. So, but actually, the svar that the Ron said is I found in B'tzel HaChachma. That's Rav Vitzal Stern. Rav Vitzal Stern, there was a well-known postik in America, the Debet Senior Rav, who passed away maybe 15, 20 years ago. He wrote the Bear, or maybe less, 10 years ago. He wrote the Bear Moshe. There's 8 volumes, I think, or 10 volumes. So he had a brother that was a Rav in Antwerp. His name was Rav Vitzal Stern, and he also wrote a Sefer B'Tzal HaChachma. We have it in the office. There was no room here, so there's about 4 volumes, I think, 3-4 volumes, but 8 chalakim. So he says, Din tzipar menagnim l'taltim b'shas l'mesach v'shashua. Birds that are I'm sorry, on page 6. So he says, birds that are chirping birds. L'shelos malas kavodo b'mishin nimso b'beis tzipar menagnim b'kol noim v'heim segurim b'kuvam. They're in a cage. El shekamatlu b'chol yom motzim osam ha'yoladim mikluvam heim misachlehem. So here we have. This makes it different than, even if you accept their own svara, but here the birds are being used because they're playing with them. The kids are playing with them. They're taking them out of the cage. Even though Shulchan Aruch says that an animal and an oaf is muktzah, maybe it's not worse than stones. The afagav shehem muksim im yechidam chasvem pichav luskav sedalos paka iser muksim mehem. It's no longer muktzah. Umutar letalto mishtamish mehem. V'chinami tziparim eyu harvim yichadim heim golam misluch olam shapar paka shehem muksim mehem. Or maybe it's different than avanim for some reason. That avanim you could be yached, but birds you can't. So he brings the tshuva of the arach or zarua, and then and in the next page he brings the rush. That the rush responds to the marach or zarua. That he says that birds are that the birds in the bird cage are muktzah, and then he says, but he says if you look in this first paragraph on the top of page 7, about 10 lines down, there's a dash in the middle of the line. He says, "Mashma the dafka taltal b'shvil kol hanov hanoim b'vahu dein latir." To him, it's mashma that it's only if you're carrying it for the because you enjoy the chirping. Just like you can't carry stones, even though you need them, but you can't carry them. But here, the kids not only have a parakeet cage that sits in the room on a high up someplace in a chain, but here they actually play with the birds. So he says exactly that svara, that if the kids are playing with it, it's not going to be muktzah. And he obviously understood that that's what the rush meant. When the rush said that it doesn't have a Torah's kli, it's because the birds are in the cage and you don't play with them. That's the way because he's intertwining this. And what the Rush talks about a stone, that a stone, even though you need it, it's muktzah. And so here also, even though you need it, it's muktzah. But so he's understanding that to mean that the reason why it's muktzah is because you can't say that you designated it to be a kli because you're not using it. But if you have birds that you're actually playing with, so then it should be mutter.
When we're talking about our concern about muktzah, is it just for tiltal, or is it just even touching the object?
Muktzah is not
touching-
usher to touch. Muktzah is only usher to be metaltal.
So,
But
so when the kids are sitting on the cars on Shabbos and we tell them to get off with it's okay for them to lean on the cars.
If you're sure allowed to lean on the car, if you don't move it. The thing is, if you sit on the car, it moves. But
Not being metal.
but that shouldn't be a problem because tiltal begufo is mutter according to the Mishnah Berurah. The Chazon Ish holds it's usher, but tiltal begufo, if you move it,
I didn't know that.
yeah. Are you a Chazon Ishnik?
No, so not a problem. Maybe I just didn't know.
I thought you were going to lose out on an important
So the
heter.
only issue that we have here at all is involves the tiltal.
The
Because
issue would
people
be
have pets in their house and they touch them. They
well. The question is, if you're touching the pet, first, is it possible to touch? It says you're not supposed to touch muktzah if you think you're going to move it by touching, like an egg. You're not allowed to touch because it's going to roll.
right.
So I don't remember where I saw it, but somebody says that the pets, if you touch them, you're going to move them. They're not standing. But the pet moves on its own. Maybe the person's not moving it. But
You're not really pushing the dog. The dog is,
well, if the dog jumps on your lap, there's no issur for the dog to be on your lap. The issur is for you to take it off your lap. But what about the hair on the dog?
yeah.
The hair you're moving.
Also, what about a problem with tolish?
Why? Because it always
If you sheds,
it always sheds.
Still sheds.
So I listened. Rabbi somebody in the shul gave me Rafi Jacobs, who's David Goldman's son-in-law, gave me a link to a shiur from Rabbi Shachter, not Rabbi Shachter, Rabbi Leibowitz, on Aryeh Leibowitz, and I listened to it yesterday on the way to the wedding. So he covers all the same territory, and so somebody asked him in the shiur, but what about shedding? So he says, well, I don't know, does it shed all the time? He says,
Depends on the
depends
breed.
Depends on the breed.
Yeah.
If it's winter, if it's summer.
Okay, but even without shedding, the Mishnah Berurah talks about whether animal hair is muktzah, because the Shulchan Aruch says that if your hands get dirty, you're allowed to wipe them on an animal tail. So the Mishnah Berurah says that Mishnah Berurah says he thinks that an animal tail is talking about an animal tail that's detached, because if it's attached, why is it different than the rest of the animal? But then he says that it's not in the Mistara that it's talking about a detached, because it says there are different types of animals. You could use this animal, you could use this animal tail and that animal tail. If it's a detached tail, so what do I have to? What does it make if it's a lion's tail or an elephant's tail? The tail's a tail. So he assumes that it's talking about that it's not detached. He says, so why should it be mutter? He says maybe because the sayar of the animal is not muktzah, because it's not part of the guf of the animal.
I think it's in a
But
beer halacha.
it's in a bir halacha, but then he concludes tzarchian. He's not ready to paskin away. So that would be the shayr with the if you're petting an animal, if you're moving the hair. So if the pet is muktzah, so then there's a problem moving the hair. I mean, at least it's a suffix in Mishnah Berurah has whether it would be muktzah.
Doesn't anybody else? I didn't. It's from a Tosefta or Mishnah or something, right? This tail thing. He quoted the show. No, I just looked at it.
Yeah, it's in the show.
If it's talking about an attachment, how is it even? He did say Torah. I didn't understand it's Torah, and it seemed like a pretty good. If he's convinced it's attached to the animal, and said
Nothing says that it's not muktzah. Maybe it's not muktzah because it's not the animal. It's the hair of the animal. Maybe hair of an animal is not muktzah.
But also, if you pick up the tail, you're also moving the tail. You're not just. It's not just. It's more than just the car.
You mean the tail is even if you say the hair is not muktzah, but the tail is more.
But it says
it's not
you can.
just.
But it says you can wipe.
Is
your
there?
If the tail is good for wiping your hands, then it's not muktzah because it's good for wiping your hands.
No, but is the tail?
The
Is there?
only question is
Is there?
of-
Is
you
there?
can't make it-
Is
But
there
it's
a
not
live?
pre-designated.
Is there a live part of the tail? or it's just
the
dead.
tail's
Yeah,
horses.
that's a lot.
Horses.
Animals
yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's no different than the leg.
Do you know why cows swat themselves with their tail? I
Get the
heard
flies
it.
off.
And why are there so many flies? I heard this on a Victor Muller tape. Because they defecate in the fields because they're there for manure.
Right.
So they attract flies. So if they're attracting flies, they're gonna, if they couldn't swat them, then they would die they'll bleed to death from the flies. So the Rebbeinu Shalom gave the cows tails so they could get rid of all the flies. It's amazing.
My sister is a vet,
Yeah.
and she says that her biggest issue with Shabbos calls is the hair. That she passes brownly.
The biggest issue with
When people bring her their animals on Shabbos,
is that the hairs shouldn't come out.
it says the hair should not come out.
I mean after you get her, but I don't know. Do you pull it out when you touch it, or it's shedding on its
She
own?
says that often sick animals, especially, have hair that is loose, and that when you touch it, it comes
When you
out.
touch it, it comes out. Just
Which is
touching
no
it.
different than people, except that when
People,
there's
you're allowed to
obviously a
touch your hair.
There's
Sham.
obviously a heter when you're a doctor dealing with sick people in case if the hair comes out, it comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But with animals, there's no such heter.
Zar Baalei Chaim, we don't-
Tzar Baalei Chaim, so it's very complicated apparently.
Yeah, Tzar Baalei Chaim is maybe
Shabbos.
is an issue. Yeah, maybe there's a heter with Tzar Baalei Chaim.
Is there, when we say that muktzah is also the tatel, to move, if you have an entity and you're not moving. the
If its
entity-
feet are still on the ground.
Yeah, you're not moving the entity as a whole, you're just like poking it.
Well, you see, the Mishnah Berurah was only willing to be makel by a tail because it's seir, because it's hair, but he wasn't willing to makel because the cow was still on the ground.
Well, did that come up, like,
What?
is that implicit in what he's saying, that if you poke?
You should have said a different story. You should say that the reason why a tail is not muktzah is because when you wipe your hands on the tail, the cow doesn't move. The cow stays where it is. The feet are still on the ground.
Wait, the Mishnah Berurah said that it has to be a detached tail?
He says that he would think that first he said you would think it's somebody detached tail, but if it's a detached tail, so why does the Shulchan Aruch have to talk about all sorts of different animal tails? A tail's a tail. So he says he thinks it makes more sense to say that it's not detached. But if it's not detached, so then why isn't it muktzah? So he says because it's the hair, so that's not part of the goof. Okay, so any event, so what are we holding? We're holding that there's two reasons why the Rush says that an animal is muktzah. That's the primary source. Rav Yosef says that even though the Rav Chaim or Zerua is makel to carry a bird cage, but the Rav Chaim or Zerua and the Rush would pass like the Rush. So you have to deal with the Rush. So the Rush is two svaras why it's muktzah. One svar is because it's not a kli, and it's like stones, and the other svar is he says you're being mishtash b'al chaim. So the part where he says it's not a kli, so this is Rav Tzal Stern is saying that maybe what he means is it's not a kli because you're not using it. It's passive. But if you're using it, their own svara. If you're using it, so it would be a kli. So we have a way around the that problem that's raised by the Rush. But then you have the other problem. You have the problem of being mishtamish with Baalei Chaim. So that we don't have an eitzah for. So that's what the Tzel HaChochma is going to try to figure out if there's a way around the second svara that he has that for it being muktzah. So he says on the bottom of the page, page 7, Val kol zanu and the yistai t'shem makom hatem b'nidin inenu. You can't be matir, even if you'll say that if you're playing with the chicks, it's like designating a rock, but he says you can't be matir. Disim masnisin, ein olam b'ilam v'larochem al gabe behema. U'masnisin, you can't ride on an animal and you can't climb up a tree. U'masnisin also sukasa b'rosh igon al gabe gamol ksher vein olam lo yantiv. If your sukkah is on an animal back, you're not allowed to climb up on it. Any usage of an animal in Shabbos is also kedisa b'Shabbos. he was rubbing his son's back with an animal. Amalei kamisham mishmar b'balei. You're not allowed to do it because you're being mishmar b'balei. Utnam beya lo rochven gabehem v'hudin chol tashus. Rashi says, lo rochven v'hudin chol tashus. B'vur ki kasher gazu chazal lo rochven gabehem gzer Hashem yachto lo rochven al gabehem. Even Chazal made it. The reason why they made it also to be mishtamish with Baal Chai is because they didn't want you riding on the horse, because Shema Yachtel tomorrow, because you might break off a branch and use it as a, what do they call it? They don't call it a whip. There's a different word for it.
Prop.
What?
Prop.
A prop?
Prop.
Oh, crap. So he says, so he says, Shema Yachtel tomorrow. Hayi b'chag zeiros and kol tashmish v'alchaim avlo shayach gabe zeira the Shema Yachtel tomorrow. They even where there's no even where there's no chash that you're going to break off a branch, it still is aser. Kahach the sukkah the Shabbos, kach chas mishtabur b'shem achayim the kol shimish b'alchaim kolu b'chol rechiva fil makom lech meshem Yachtel zvar the lapog. Even in a case where there's no possibility that you're going to break, no reason to break off a branch, like if you have a sukkah on top of a gomel. So
so how does that go back to why can you wipe your hands on the tail? Why is that not using the animal?
Yes, so why is it should be both? It should be two. It should be muktzah and it should be mishtamish b'achai. I don't know. That's a good question. So, but then he says in the bottom here, he says Ella. The last paragraph. This is a very good question, but I don't know. El Kshinir Kidash Rabbeinu Harash Lav Kul Yamahu B'Zeh V'Nimsa sorry, but I didn't. So what he's getting at is here. Look at I didn't do it. Look at Hay, Os Hay. He says V'Kevi Shashimish Aser B'Chol Ba'alei Chayim Gam Be'elo Shekol Tashmish Sushul Melachas Heter B'Vad V'Shar Ben Gzer Shem Yachtel Zmoreh. Since the Isser is even if it's a low plug, even if there's no chash, you're gonna really want the animal to run quickly and you'll break off a branch. Even though you designated them for toys, you're not gonna you don't need to hit a bird to fly faster. So nonetheless, it'll be muktzah because there's a low plug. Once Chazal made an issa to mishtamish b'alchaim, even though he's saying that he's trying to develop a heter is that maybe birds there's no issa to be mishtamish with a bird because you don't fly on a bird unless you're a wizard or something, but you're not flying on the birds. So that. And that Nakuda, he wants to say there's a machlokes rishonim. He says, V'nir kidas Rabbeinu Harash of Kuyamu, the rush that says that there's a problem of mishtamish b'achayim by the birds in the cage. He says, there's other rishonim that are chol. He says, I am b'sefer beis b'chir Rabbeinu Meiri, shekasav kishem shenesra rechiva kach nesra mishum zah kol tashmish b'achayim ap behema daka. You're not allowed to use even a smaller animal. It's not only a horse or a cow or a camel. Even let's say a cat would be usher. The chazu v'nishnu dvar ve'el b'chidush meiri shekaz Hashem yachtel zmara u'midnei times nesa kol tashiv b'chayim afilu behem daka. You're not even allowed to use the behem daka, even though you don't need to whip it. Before shkein rochim v'diktam asita lav dafke hudin kol tashmish u'chein kol daka asur l'shtamish. V'afagad l'shayich r'gab, even though you can't ride on it, mikom mikom harei kol tashmish chal isv v'zeh shayich b'gam v'dehem v'daka. She says, muchach the dafka b'hem v'daka. It's muchach from the Meiri. He makes a deal that it's only a low standing animal. But a bird is different. So he wants to say that the Meiri is chaylik on the rush. The rush says that on a bird, you're not allowed to mishtamish b'achayim. That's the second reason why he says the bird is aser, is muktzah. So he says, but the Sefer of the Meiri, from his deal, the Meiri, that a bird, since you can't, a small animal, maybe you'll use it to carry something. So it's possible to use it. But a bird, you never use. And then he has the Eglei Tal also quotes the Meiri. So his conclusion is on the bottom of page 8. He says, "Mikom makom, kevil l'das Meiri v'Eglei Tal l'shayich Israel mishtamish b'achai ba'ofos." Since the Meiri seems to, and the Eglei Tal quotes the Meiri, that by birds there's no mishtamish. Then there noite gam das and the minchas batim also seems the way. Okay, misha mara lahater latalto b'shavas. This is the very important line. Latalto b'shavas esat ziparim hamenagdim shichla l'mesach ein mazich also. You don't get upset at them. Mikol makom chatchila ein lintos memorfurish b'chubas harash. So he says that if somebody has an important need to be able to play with a bird, so then you can't be angry at them because there's a basis to be mekel. Because the Isser being, according to Meiri, there's no Isser being Mishtamish in Baal Chai. So the thing is, though, that this heter only works for birds. It doesn't work. At first I saw it, I got very excited. I thought, you see, Rizal Stern says that if it's in the Makom Tzairich, Misha Mora Hater Tilta B'Shabbos, it's a Yipur Menagdim, a Mochel Osam. So I thought, okay, so he's saying that the evidence is a heter to carry an animal. It's limited to birds. So it's a very limited. So if your kids want to play with parakeet, you don't have to yell at them. But other animals, I mean a cat and a dog, those are behemadakas. I don't even a rabbit is probably also behemedaka. So.
But Moshe's tshuva was only on birds.
No, Ramoshes. So let's just summarize. The bottom line is with all this discussion is, and then I have to say another thing. Look at page 9. Shlomo Zalman says on the bottom of page 9, Tzipor Kedoma Ochavim Shanoshim that there are people Elushim Mevalim Zmanam Hevel Rik. He doesn't think too highly of people that are busy with dogs. In the Bear Moshe, he talks about the Meshugayim that keep dogs in the houses for pets. Regila Masachik Behem, Kavish Shetashmisham who Talti Makom Makom Shaper Shaper Shari Vainzem Muktzah. So here Rosh Zalman, and here you don't even have to say that the grandchildren did it, changed it according to. He says beferish in the Shulchan Shlomo, which is Rosh Zalman Sefer on Shulchan Shabbos.
Rosh Zalman himself didn't write Shulchan.
No, he didn't write it. No. So you're right. So who's where?
His grandson, right?
I think this Pevav, I forgot the Pevav. I think says this is where the source is. I think it says Ksav Yad. I have to look it up. But you're right. So what do we have? If somebody, there's a woman called me. The reason why I got into this topic is a woman called me. She said she has an emotional need to have it to be able to play with her cat or her dog. I can't remember for the life of me who it was. I called up a few women, and it wasn't any of them. So I don't know. If you come across a woman that says that she asked me that, shy, let me know. But I was going to call her back, and I was going to tell her that there is basis to be mako, because even though the Rosh says that an animal, birds are muktzah, birds in a bird cage are muktzah, but the advantage we have from Bitzal Stern, we have a svara to say that doesn't apply to animals that you handle. It only applies to the birds in the bird cage. But the Rosh does the second svara about being mishtamish b'balei chayim. So I don't know how Ramoshe how he gets around it. Ramoshe and this Shlomo Zalman, how do they get around the problem of being mishtamish? If you're just using it as a pet, maybe that's not called being mishtamish. They're being misachik with it. Maybe they hold that's not called being mishtamish. Okay, that would be.
Your cat jumps on the Shabbos table. Can you push it off? Isn't that tzarek gufo tzarek kama?
Yeah, but according to the Rush, there's no heter tzarek gufo. That's what he says.
Balei Chaim is not just, it's not played. It's not a sham shalism.
No, he said that's he said before. He said it's like tzarus, it's like stones that you can't, even though you have tzarek gufo and kama, there's no heter. That's in the Brick. He also says that there's no heter tzarek gufo and kama on a rock.
But you can elbow it off.
You could elbow it off, right? You could elbow it off. No, it's total begufo. You could use your elbow.
And if it's in the house anyway, you can lure it off with like a
Easy.
food.
Yeah, I mean, there's another issue with animals, and that is tzad. That's another issue. It depends how trained the dog is. If the dog's not trained, then it's for sure usher because you're capturing it by. If you tell the dog come here or whatever you say to dogs, then if the dog obeys your commands, so
By
then
definition, that's probably.
that well, a trained dog, yeah. I mean,
obeys
if
your
you're breaking him
commands,
in, what?
If you obeys your
Then it's
commands.
no tzad because then he's not.
But if it's in a house with the door closed anyways, there's that.
Yeah, but it depends if the dog's in the house but you can't get it to it in one leap. If it's in the birds in the house, and the fact it's the house doesn't. You still should say that if it's flying around and you're running around trying to catch it, it's still should say that. Anyway, bottom line is that we have the edus of Mordechai Tendler and Rav Shapsi Rappaport that Moshe held that pets are not muktzah. I don't know how he deals with the issue of being mishtamish b'ayachai, maybe like you were saying, because I don't know.
It's not shiur.
It's not shimush, I don't know.
Well, I'm still stuck on the tail part too.
And the tail, okay.
Which sounds
And
like
then, Rosh Zalman says it's mutter, at least that's how he's quoted. But it's chatchila, it's for sure better not to be handling a dog, because you see, it's a stretch. And even Ramesh originally thought that it's muktzah. Even according to every Tendler, he changed it. At best, he changed his mind, but originally he held it was muktzah. So
Have you ever seen people seen idols to Shalom Shabbos?
no, I'm sure that they do. I mean, Rosh Hashanah was Mekalon. Okay. Shkaya.
No.
Oh, okay.
I didn't even hear.
Good question.